Howdy folks, Spencer here, and today I'm going to be going through and taking a look at the upcoming legendary Akira and going over the stats that we have been shown so far on the recent 10 Forward stream. As always, chapters will be listed down below for those of you that want to skip ahead to any specific topic. And the first thing I want to talk about here is how this ship is going to be available. It is going to be available as part of a new legendary bundle that will contain both this legendary Akira and a legendary Mogai, which I'll be covering in another video. This bundle will have a base cost of 12,000 Zen, so that is $120. And they said on the stream that it was going to have an introductory sale of something around 30%. However, if we look at similar bundles that have been released in the past, like the legendary Romulan Warbird bundle, that launched with a 35% discount, which then matches all of the bundle sales you would see after that point. So if that is what they do here, then the cost you're going to be looking at for this bundle is 7,800 Zen or 78 bucks. And if they do the exact number they said on the stream, which they didn't seem too sure about, that would only be a 30% discount. But I am inclined to believe that they're going to follow the same sale that they did with prior bundles like this. Now, for the release date, they said it should arrive sometime around April 13th on PC. And for those of you on console, I would say probably sometime mid to late May, you'll probably see this bundle. And now let's take a look at the new skin. But before I show that off, I just want to mention that the name of the new skin and this new version of the Akira is the Matsumoto, and this is named after the creator of the space battleship Yamato, who recently passed away. So it's been named in their honor. So this is a TMP era skin for the Akira. And the reason they went with a TMP era approach to this is because they've already done a few different 25th century takes on the Akira with the prior versions that are in the game, and they wanted to do something a little bit different. Now, for the older Akira skins, there will be no remaster. However, all of the skins in the Akira class will have access to the 7A material once this ship goes live. And for those of you not familiar with what legendary ships are, I just want to go through and quickly recap what exactly they mean in the game. Legendary ships are generally the most premium versions of some of the iconic ships from the shows and movies, and in many cases, they will be the best version of that ship in the game. Legendary ships are only available via the C-Store, and when you do purchase one, it is going to be available account-wide. Now, the downside is that almost every legendary, actually every legendary ship in the game is part of a bundle. There's none that you can purchase on their own like a normal C-Store ship. You have to get them through specific bundles. So the cost to go in and pick up a legendary ship is typically a bit higher than your traditional C-Store ship because you've got to get a bundle that could cost 70, 80, or 100 plus bucks. Legendary ships will come with all skins, consoles, traits, and other accessories from all of the versions of that ship that existed when the legendary was released. If a new version of the ship launches after the legendary one has been released, the legendary one will not be updated to have those newer consoles, traits, and whatever. And legendary ships do have a new Starship Trait that will unlock account-wide once one character has unlocked it. However, legendary ships do not come with a new console. I saw a lot of people asking about what the new console was when I did my initial breakdown live stream last week, and just want to clarify again, legendary ships do not come with a new console. The consoles that they come with are the consoles from the prior versions of that ship. And moving on, let's take a look at the Starship Trait, which is called Torpedo Command and Control. When you hit a command bridge officer ability for 6 seconds, any of your pet's kinetic weapons will apply a stacking kinetic debuff for 120 seconds to your foe. When you hit Miracle Worker abilities for 6 seconds, your kinetic weapon attacks will apply a stacking kinetic debuff rating for 120 seconds to your target. So, this is a trait that has the potential to stack up quite a bit of debuff on your target. However, it is specifically just kinetic resistance that is being debuffed. And even for those of you running tort boats, I just don't think there's room for it on most of the current tort builds out there. We are really in a situation where a trait has to be incredibly good for us to give up a Starship Trait slot to put it in. And this trait, I just don't see being good enough for most Torp users to go out and consider using. And if you're someone just running an energy weapon build, like Beam Overload, Cannon Scatter Volley, something like that, this trait does basically nothing for you because it's only debuffing kinetic the resistance on the target. It's not doing anything for your energy weapons. So I think that this trait is pretty much irrelevant for 99% of you. Even for a Torp user, just isn't good enough. And next up, we have some new Hangar Pets that are going to be introduced with the ship. And these are the Kodai Command Fighter Squadrons. These are basically a copy paste of the Valkyrie fighters that launched last year on the Norway. And what makes these fighters unique is that they have something called command integration on them. And what that means is that when you hit a command inspiration aura on your build, they will get a torpedo spread. For those of you that do not know what the hell I'm talking about when I say command inspiration, if you have a command ship, you have this bar here that will fill up while you're in combat just by hitting bridge officer abilities. And once it gets up to 100%, you get to hit one of these buffs, Turn the Tide, which gives a damage resistance buff to you and allies. Then you've got Against All Odds, which is a damage boost and minus weapon power cost to you and allies for 15 seconds. And then you've got Battle Preparation, which is a cooldown reduction for you and allies. So once you have that built up to 100 and you have hit one of those abilities, what these new pets do is they get a Torp Spread 1 off of you hitting that. And that can be triggered as often as once every 40 seconds. Now, for this command integration, these pets have taken a little bit of a DPS hit, so you are going to be losing 8% DPS on these compared to the normal Valkyrie fighters, with the trade-off being that if you use enough of these command inspiration abilities in a run, that maybe that damage from that would make up that 8%. Overall, I think that for most of you, the normal Valkyrie fighters that you have are already good enough. I think that this is a neat concept, but the fact that they take a DPS hit and will only be able to really make up for that by being on a full command ship really does decrease the value of these to me, but I think it's neat that they're trying something new. I just don't think it's something that is going to be relevant to most of you. And now I want to talk about what is probably the most exciting part of this ship for many of you, and that is the new torpedo that will be a unique unlock from the legendary Akira. This is the Maelstrom Quantum Torpedo Launcher, and this has some really nice TMP visuals. I want to show you it firing before I get into the rest of the stats for it here. So let's take a look at this clip from the recent 10 forward. This is the Maelstrom Quantum Torpedo with a Torpedo Spread 1 on Kale's build. So you saw it was hitting for about 183k there for him. And again, remember, this is Kale's build, and he's literally got nothing on it. So let me show that visual again real quick. It is these blue torps that you see firing out of the ship here that have these spikes. These are inspired from some of the blue torps shown in the TMP movies there. So, and again, they're hitting quite hard on that build that Kale is using, and again, that's a build that basically has nothing on it. So these torpedoes are designed to hit quite hard, but the trade-off is that they are charge-based torpedoes. They are specifically designed for you to use them strategically. They said right on the stream that you should not be auto-firing these torpedoes. So if you're someone that doesn't like needing to manually control things, these torps are not going to be for you. These torps are explicitly for people that want to manually time a hit on a target that is going to just be absolutely devastating. The charges take 30 seconds to rebuild per charge, and you can have up to 3 charges on each of these torpedoes. So that is 90 seconds to rebuild all 3 charges on one of these torps. These torps are compatible with torpedo spread, high yield, and transport warhead. The only torpedo firing mode they shouldn't work with is the nanite repair one or whatever from Miracle Worker, which I don't think anyone's ever used anyways. And again, these were hitting quite hard even with Kale's build. So on a properly boosted or properly built out build, these are probably going to be hitting in the millions. And of course, these torpedoes can be upgraded, can be used on any ship, and you are allowed to use 2 of them on a ship. Now, they did say that there will be more torpedoes like this released in the future, but this specific version that has the TMP visuals is going to be exclusive to the legendary Akira. So you have to get the legendary Akira to get the version of this torp that has these TMP visuals. But once you have it, again, you can use these torps on any ship. And heading over to the ship stats here, the first thing that really stands out about this legendary Akira is that it is a cruiser. The prior versions of the Akira were escorts, so that is certainly a bit of a change there, going from a strike wing escort over to a multi-mission cruiser. This does have a 5-3 weapon setup, though, which I think many of you are going to be very happy with. And given that this is a cruiser, this will have access to some of the cruiser commands, and specifically, they have given this one access to the weapons and shield cruiser commands. So all of you are probably just going to be running the weapons one all the time just to reduce your weapon power cost. For devices here, it's just 2 devices, so a little bit light there. We have 4 engineering consoles, 2 science, and 5 tactical. Again, that's a little bit weird given that this is a cruiser. However, I think that might just be because they didn't want the legendary version to have less tac consoles than the prior versions of the Akira. So I think that might be why we have 5 tac consoles here. And of course, we have retained a hangar bay, as this ship does have some new pets on it, which I've already talked about. For the bridge officers, I just want to clarify that they did show off an incorrect setup on the stream last week. The version that they showed had 3 specialization seats, and that was because they were working on a very early version of the ship on the stream there, and that was a typo basically. The lieutenant tac with command was meant to be a lieutenant commander tac, so it was just a small typo when they were setting it up. And what that means is that the correct bridge officer layout will be a commander engineer with command, a lieutenant commander tac, lieutenant commander science with miracle worker, lieutenant universal, and an ensign tac. So if you saw this picture at the left floating around and any discussion about 3 spec seats, just know that that is based off of inaccurate info. That was an error on their part on that stream. And now I want to go through and take a look at some Theorycraft ideas that I put together for how to build this ship out. So I'm going to pull up 4 example builds on Notepad if you want to look at them closer. feel free to pause the video, but I'm not going to waste too much of your time going through each of these specific builds there. And I will say that with the command seating on the ship, that does of course lean into taking advantage of the torpedo side of things. And if you're looking for a tanking platform, the Sirius is going to be cheaper and will perform better in that role than what this ship can do. So here's the notepad document. Again, if you want to look at this in a bit more detail, then feel free to pause. And if you're not sure what the abbreviations are, if you're curious about a specific build, just ask down in the comments section below and I'll respond with like the full typed out names there. But one of the big issues that I saw right off the bat here is that you do have a Lieutenant Universal, but you're pretty much forced with most builds to make that attack. So if you look at the Torp build here, if I want to run my Fire at Will and Cannon Scatter Volley for ETM, and then my High Yield 3, well, if I then want to run Chemosite and a Mine Pattern, I have to make that a Lieutenant tack there. And that Ensign tack that we have there as like the third tack seat really isn't doing much. And, you know, this is a really old issue where when you have like 3 ensign level tack slots on the ship to fill, that third slot becomes a bit questionable with what to put on there because tack team sucks. I mean, there's lots of issues with running tack team on high performing builds because it can interrupt your firing cycles and make your weapons not fire as much. So you don't really have many good options, and distribute targeting is pretty much as good as you're going to get, but it's not really ideal. And then you have the other issue with this ship, and that is that given the fact that you're probably going to make that Lieutenant to Universal attack, you're really stuck with limited room for uncon procs on this build. So for unconventional systems, like with some of these builds that I have here, I can fit a Tractor Beam 1 on. That, and for most of these, that's it. On the Torp build here, I did Tractor Beam 1, Gravwell 1, and Emit Unstable Warp Bubble 1, which, I mean, it's something, but it's not really ideal. So one of the big limitations I think you're going to find when building this ship out is the Lieutenant Universal is probably going to be attack, and you are going to have basically no room for unconventional systems procs on this build if you want to take advantage of the Miracle Worker seating. So it's not really the best, and honestly, the more I was looking at this when planning out builds for it, the more disappointed I became with the ship. Like I'd been very hopeful that the legendary Akira was going to be something interesting, but looking at the limitations that this bridge officer seating has, I've very quickly become just a bit annoyed with just how underwhelming this legendary Akira is going to be. And now let's take a look at some comparable ships here. So I want to compare against all of the other Commander Command ships that also have a secondary Miracle Worker seat. I then want to take a look at the legendary Akira versus the prior T6 version. And lastly, how the Akira stacks up against some of the other 521 or 5.3 command ships in the game. So I'm going to be using Fluffle's sortable filterable ship list for this comparison. If you're curious about that spreadsheet, I'll include a link to it in the description down below. So we have quite a few ships in the game that do have this Commander Command plus Miracle Worker setup, but for having a secondary Miracle Worker with a full Lieutenant Commander, the only other option is the Terran Sirius. Now, I want to remind all of you that the Terran Sirius just launched as part of the 13th anniversary bundle, and many of you were very unhappy and underwhelmed by that ship. So I just want to make this comparison here that, like, layout wise, I don't really think there's that much of a difference in the level of underwhelming that I see between the Terran Sirius layout and the legendary Akira layout. Obviously, there's some other differences between the ships. The Akira is a 5-3, the Sirius is a 4-4. But when we look at the bridge officer seatings, I mean, the big limitation with the Sirius was this lieutenant engineer seat. But like I just was saying with the build Theorycraft section there, I actually think that this ensign tack is sort of a limitation on this ship, on the Akira that is. And if you compare to the universal seating that some of the other legendary ships have, the Akira really did not get that great of a universal setup here. So it's not as flexible as some of the other ships on this list. One that I would really compare this to is the legendary Vorcha Command Support Battlecruiser. That has a fairly similar setup to the Akira, except it's got a Lieutenant Commander Universal and a Lieutenant Universal. It does have only a Lieutenant level Merc Worker seat, but you get so much more flexibility with the layout on the Vorcha than you do the Akira. The Akira being limited to just this Lieutenant Universal really limits the flexibility that the Akira has compared to the Vorcha, the Praetor, and some of these other options here. Now, comparing to the prior version of the T6 Akira, which, by the way, is 8 years old, this is quite a bit of an upgrade. The prior T6 Akira was a Strike Wing escort, and its setup was or is not anywhere near as comparable as to what the legendary Akira is getting with its spec seating. So the Fleet Akira has just a lieutenant commander engineer with pilot, which now isn't too bad with the pilot revamp that just went through. But that's the only spec seat that the prior T6 version of the Akira got. And then this legendary one, of course, gets the commander engineer with command and lieutenant commander science with Merc Worker. Now, I think there are pros and cons to both setups. I value the legendary one a bit more, but if you're just looking for like a pure do setup, I would rather have had something a bit closer to the prior Akira than what they ended up giving us with the legendary. The legendary Akira one is more torp focused, which I do like, but it's also like hybrid with this Merc Worker, so that they're really trying to push like CSV torp or beam overload torp setups, things like that with this legendary Akira, but they just haven't really given it the seating to really pull that off that effectively. And of course, the legendary has a better weapon setup at 5-3 versus 4-3 on the prior version. Now, I want to compare this ship against some of the other 5-2 or 5-3 command ships in the game that have another spec seat on them. So let me filter this down to ships with 5 forward weapons, and here we go. So the legendary Akira is this top row here. One of the ships that I would compare this to right off the bat is the Norway from last year. I think that's one to use as a fair comparison, given that it's also a C-store ship. And I think that I would prefer to fly the Fleet Norway than the legendary Akira, because that Intel secondary seat just does so much more for you. One of the issues with Merc Worker is that the main benefit of Merc Worker comes from having a commander Merc Worker to get that extra console slot. When it comes to actually using the Merc Worker abilities, it's just mixed armament synergy and narrow sensor bands. And that's it. Like, Merc Worker as a whole, specialization wise, honestly, is probably the next thing that needs a bit of a revamp. So I would prefer to have like a pilot or an Intel secondary seat right now over a Miracle Worker. And I think for most of you, especially going in doing like a hybrid build, Fleet Norway might be a better option for doing like a hybrid uh do torp hybrid build. Some other ships you could compare this to, the Section 31 Command Heavy Battle Cruiser. I think that the Section 31 blows the Akira out of the water. I think that the Section 31 Command Heavy Battle Cruiser is a significantly better ship for the types of builds that you would put on the Akira. And I feel the same about the Vorcha. The Vorcha does also have Merc Worker, but I just feel that the flexibility you have with the Vorcha, with that Lieutenant Commander and Lieutenant Universal seating there, just makes it such a stronger ship for the variety in how you can set it up compared to the Akira, which is really quite limited with how the seating is set up because you're basically forced to make this universal attack. So you don't really have that universal seat because you're going to have to make it attack on the majority builds that you'd want to put on it. So overall, like just comparing to some of these other options, I don't think the Akira wins out as being the best for like a pure torp boat. You know, there's plenty of other ships here. The Section 31, the Vorcha, those are certainly a bit better when it comes to running torps. And for like doing the hybrid builds, Section 31 again, the Delkina. The Delkina, in fact, has set records while running hybrid setups. So, like, I would say the Delkina is a much better ship if you can afford it. If you're looking to do a hybrid torp energy weapon setup. So, who exactly is this ship for? Well, number one, it's for those of you that are fans of the Akira. This ship does come with all of the consoles, skins, and traits from the prior versions of the Akira, which some of you may not have on account wide unlock. And some of those consoles are honestly quite fun. The point defense system console can be used on any ship, and it doesn't do the most damage, but it is a fun little console to use. And then, of course, the T5 version has the torpedo point defense system console on it, which is unfortunately, for the time being, locked to the Akira. Hopefully, they unlock it so other ships can use it. But this is actually a really fun console to use for a torpedo focused build. So these first two consoles are really fun, and having them on account wide unlock, is always pretty nice. And again, hopefully the torpedo point defense system is made to be usable on any ship here in the near future. The console off of the Tier 6, the destabilized tachyon emitters, if I recall, like this is just a really bad console, so we can ignore that one. So yeah, for those of you that are fans of the Akira line of ships, this is pretty much an all-in-one package to get you everything Akira related in the game. So that might be enough for some of you to go out and pick this ship up. For those of you that are looking for another torp boat option or a platform that can handle some hybrid do torp builds, this would be a good option to have on account wide unlock. I don't think it's the best for that role. I think the Delkina, if you can afford it, is definitely better. The World Razor is certainly better. But the Delkina and World Razor are both lockbox ships, so that's not really a fair comparison because getting those on just one character could easily cost you more than what this entire legendary bundle is going to cost. And this legendary one is going to be unlocking this and the legendary Mogai account wide, so quite a bit of a difference price wise. And you would expect that the ones that are that much more expensive would hopefully be better to justify the cost. And for those of you that are wanting a 5-3 command ship with a hangar bay on account wide unlock, and you don't want to get some of the other ships out there that might cost a bit more, this is a pretty good option for that. And of course, those of you that want to mess with the Maelstrom torpedoes off of this ship, that's probably a good reason for some of you to pick this ship up, though that's a bit expensive if that's the only thing you're getting out of this ship. And now it's time for the conclusion. I do think that this ship is a nice upgrade over the recent Terran Sirius for those wanting a command to miracle worker platform for DPS purposes. The Starship trait that this ship has is really quite underwhelming. Um, it's pretty much a torp boat exclusive trait because it's only really going to benefit torp boats. And even then, it just doesn't look like it's going to be that good. Like, I don't foresee any torp boat going out and taking one of their existing traits off to run this new one. It just isn't that good. And the new torpedo that this ship comes with, the Maelstrom Quantum Torpedo, has quite a bit of potential if you time it right. But if you're someone that just wants to spam bar or auto fire it, it's pretty much a wasted weapon slot. So it's really situational and really meant for those of you that want a weapon that you can strategically time on a target to strategically fire and take them out when they're vulnerable to do a lot of damage to them. Now, would I pay 12,000 Zen for this ship and this bundle? No. I would only ever buy this bundle on sale, which it should be when it initially launches. At a 35% discount, the legendary Akira will be available alongside the legendary Mogai in that bundle for 78 bucks worth of Zen. So I think the overall package will hopefully be worth it, especially if there's a T6 coupon. If they don't put a T6 coupon in the bundle, then the value might become a bit questionable. And like, I don't think that this ship or the legendary Mogai, which again I will cover in another video, I don't think either of them are bad. I just think that they're boring. I think the Mogai is certainly a bit better than this Akira, but for both of them, I feel really underwhelmed. And even at 7,800 Zen, that is still pretty costly, is what I have noted here. You know, I don't really think that this ship or the Mogai is really going to change the game with or the meta, with the things that they have on them. So I think the main reason to purchase this or the Mogai is simply for the fun aspect of it. And the last bit of the conclusion here is that if you're just looking for a ship that can do loads of DPS in the C store that you can have on account-wide unlock, the Hydra is so damn good. The Hydra is amazing for normal and advanced content. That ship for normal and advanced easily blows this Akira out of the water. And if you're looking for a tanking platform, I do think that the Sirius in the C store would be a better option for that playstyle. And as I've already said, I don't think that the ship is bad. It's a solid ship. It's just boring. It just doesn't do anything new that other existing platforms can't already do, and it just is boring. I don't know what else to say about it. I haven't felt this underwhelmed about a ship in a while. When I was doing the stream right after they did the announcement, I know a couple of you were messaging me saying, "Spencer, you look bored," and it was true. I was really looking forward to the legendary Akira, and the way this one was set up just didn't do what I was hoping for with a legendary Akira. It's not a bad ship. It's just not a ship necessarily for me and my playstyle. But that's going to be it for today. If you have any questions or comments about this, feel free to drop them down below. Again, thank you to all channel members and viewers for the continued support. I'll see you guys around.